Hi everyone, it's Alan Lepofsky here from Constellation Research, and I'm coming to you from Microsoft Ignite 2018 in Orlando, Florida. Now, there's a lot of things I could be discussing around team collaboration and productivity, things that are happening in the Office suite, things that are happening in SharePoint, things that are happening in Planner and OneDrive and OneNote, but for this series of videos, I want to focus on Microsoft Teams. Now, I don't want to dive into too many features of Teams. I want to talk a little bit higher level of some of the themes, but I will mention a few things that they brought out feature-wise. The first is the ability to record meetings. So meetings that are taking place, sort of that replacement for Skype for Business. So if you're in Microsoft Teams and you're having a meeting with your colleagues, you're able to record that meeting. Now that meeting isn't just recorded and in line in the stream, it's also indexed so that you can go back later and search for keywords and find things. So take a look at what they're doing around recording meetings. The second thing they've done is given you the ability to share your screen in a private message. So if you and I are chatting, I'm able to instantly share my screen, show you things, work on things in common, etc. Now, I think that's really useful, but I had mentioned to them that I would also like to see just a native screen capture. So not screen recording or screen sharing, but just screen capture, like a screen sharing tool or a screen capture tool. And the third, one of the things they've added is using artificial intelligence, the ability to blur the background in meetings. So when you're doing a video, you can get rid of that background that people have, the bookshelf that they have in the background, or confidential information. So 3 features that I wanted to point out, but I will talk about some other features when I get into some of the higher level themes that Microsoft Teams introduced this week. All right, so the first big theme that I want to discuss is adoption of the technology itself. So the main question is, are people using Teams? Now, this is a highly competitive market. You've got Microsoft battling out against other large enterprise software players like Google, Cisco, IBM, as people adopt a more collaborative way to work instead of email and starting to use these stream-based products, as well as the dedicated startups that are building things. Obviously, Slack comes to mind, but there's competitors as well. So the question that always comes up is, which tools should I use? Which tools are other people using? Now, the problem is measurements for the usage of these tools is inconsistent. People talk about the number of users. People talk about the number of companies. They talk about paid versus free. They talk about daily versus weekly versus monthly active. There's a million ways of looking at it. And Microsoft this week decided to use a very specific statistic, one that I think is really good. They said they have over 60 companies now with 10,000 or more active monthly users. So think about what that is. That's a lot of large companies continuously using this product. So to me, that's what's important. It's not about how many free or how many paid or how many gazillions of customers. It's how many big enterprises are actually using this. So I think that was a very good message for them to deliver, and one that's going to be hard for a lot of the competition to sort of meet. So 60,000 paid organizations using 10,000 or more monthly active seats of Microsoft Teams. The next big key theme for Microsoft Teams has been integration. So they announced a lot of things around integration across the rest of the family of the portfolio of products. Things like Yammer, OneDrive, SharePoint, Planner, on and on. So there was a lot of focus on how the rest of the Office 365 family is now being better integrated into Microsoft Teams. They also talked about enhancements to the developer API, allowing third-party vendors, things like web conferencing or project management or file sharing vendors, to add their elements into Microsoft Teams. And then the third part of integration that they talked about is on the hardware side, working with PBX vendors, camera vendors, speaker vendors, PBX vendors, etc. So really enhancing the amount of hardware and devices and room systems that Microsoft Teams can integrate with. The next high-level themes that Microsoft introduced this week is around industry verticals for Teams. So this means they're making versions of Teams that can meet specific needs, not just certifications and requirements, but the features and functions that those industries need. The 2 that they started with are healthcare and first-line workers, so people like retail. Now in healthcare, they've done things like make it easy to upload photos and annotate them so that doctors can share images around x-rays or around things like rashes and things, and they can allow people in Microsoft Teams to actually share that information securely and privately. The second thing they did is for first-line workers, they're making it the ability for people to be able to do things like booking schedules, things that were in Staff Hub before. They're actually eliminating the standalone product Staff Hub and integrating those features directly into Microsoft Teams. Now, I think the ability to move, or the desire to move into verticals, makes a lot of sense. It allows them to target specific audiences, but as I was pointing out, industry verticals is about more than just product features. It's about knowing how to sell into those verticals and support those verticals. So you have to have sales teams that know the language and know how to go into a bank or a manufacturing plant or healthcare and actually really sell to those organizations. So it's great to see them starting to build products for these, but they also have to make sure that they know how to sell into these industry verticals. Another big theme that they focused on is making sure that Teams is enterprise ready. These are all the things that sort of happen in the background. Things like scalability, security, and administration. So they showed off a lot of new administration features this week. The ability to control users and groups using dynamic groups so that when people are added to those Office 365 groups, they're instantly added to the right Microsoft Teams and channels. They showed off things like statistics and being able to look at the usage of those. So a lot of things around the administration side. Also, a big applause was they've added new administration roles so that there's a more granular control of who can do things around Microsoft Teams, who can create those groups, administer those groups, add users to those groups, etc. Now, from a scalability standpoint, it's more than just numbers of users or performance of the application. It's things like numbers of data centers and where that information is stored, so data residency and compliance. So lots of good new things happening around Microsoft Teams, around enterprise scalability and enterprise needs and administration needs and security. Now, one of the areas I was a little disappointed in that I didn't hear enough talk about at this Ignite is Teams integration with Microsoft Dynamics. Why that's of interest to me is I think that's a real value proposition for Microsoft to be able to sort of link together collaboration with those business outcomes, with that information they have about customers and about processes. And I think that's something that would be a big step up against the competition, really focusing not just on communication and collaboration, but on bringing real business processes and real business value to the things they're doing in Microsoft Teams. So there is some integration there, but I sort of expected it to be a little bit more of a mainline message. I think we're going to be hearing things like that from some of their competition around the integrations with things like ERP and CRM and collaboration. So I hope to hear more about that from Microsoft in the future. Okay, so there you have it, a recap of a lot of the announcements from Microsoft Teams this week. They've added lots of integrations across the rest of the Office 365 portfolio. They're moving into things like industry verticals for healthcare and retail. They've added more for security and scalability, and they're focusing on some really good use cases like solving meetings. Now, as I mentioned, it's a highly competitive space, so it'll be interesting to see where these products are going. I think they've shown some great growth and some great numbers. I mentioned earlier, 60 different companies of 10,000 and up deployments, and I think 330,000 organizations overall using Microsoft Teams. Is your company using Microsoft Teams? Let me know. What do you like about it? What don't you like? What would you like to see them doing? What do you think their competition is doing well? What do you think Microsoft is doing well? This has been Alan Lepofsky from Constellation Research talking about Microsoft Teams at Microsoft Ignite 2018. Talk to you later. Bye.